Hi, Mark. How are you?
I'm good. You?
I'm good. Good. As good as can be, given the
Given the
season,
situation,
circumstance. Yeah, yeah.
because you're also at home.
Oh yes. I mean, we're on lockdown. We've been for almost 2 weeks now, and before that, I was in quarantine for 14 days as well. So I've been home. I've been home for a minute.
Oh wow, yeah, yeah. We here in Amsterdam have a lockdown. I think since 3 weeks. You can go out for a walk.
So how's that affect working from home and all the conversations?
I didn't hear your question.
Happening today.
I didn't hear your question.
Hello,
Sorry,
can you hear me?
You full away? Yes.
Oh, okay. So I was asking, so how has it been working from home and, adapting to that? Or have you always worked from home?
No. I usually almost never work from home. So I live very near bicycle. It's 10 minutes. So that's super good always. So I mean, it works, of course. We have Teams, and we're all the time video calling each other and meeting, which works. But I must say, especially in creative process, if you're with people collaborating, want to do a brainstorm together, want to bounce off some ideas, it's difficult. I find it tough. Then real life meeting, throwing ideas, seeing each other in the eyes is better. But okay, I mean, we manage, and we learn.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's the new, it's our new reality, and we're also adjusting to it. This was meant to be a live showcase, and we had to, innovate in less than 2-3 weeks to sort of make this happen.
Yeah.
So one second, impressive. I think people are trying to log into the session. I don't know why it's not letting them in. I'm getting some messages on the side that they're trying to get in on the live chat, and they're not able to access it for some reason.
Okay. We're not in a hurry. I'm not in a hurry.
Oh, okay, great.
I have a cold Heineken 00 here. So.
That's super cool. I wonder.
Hey, and did you see my Heineken suit I'm wearing today?
I saw that. I remember that print. From when? That's one of.
I was in Lagos. I think it was 3 years ago.
Yes.
At Fashion and Design Week, and indeed, that was when we had it made. And I thought it was such a good occasion, especially because it's also all recycled old stuff. Huh? It's old sun umbrellas, it's old aprons, it's old apparel that we remade into a couple of suits.
Oh, that's super cool. The focus of this season has been on sustainability, on people reusing, repurposing, and sort of trying to think about what the future of fashion will be in a world that's post-COVID. Of course, we know that the supply chain globally is suddenly on pause because of what's going on. So we're trying to use this season to, sort of think into the future, launch ourselves into the future, and sort of reimagine and think about what we would like it to be. And it's interesting that you were with us in Nigeria, I think about 3 years ago, and this was one of the things you talked about. So, which sort of puts Heineken, a bit above the rest of the world in that, especially a lot of companies, when it comes to thinking about sustainability and how that's fused with design. You've just told me about your jacket that you're wearing and the fabric and the textiles and the process, So we wanted to use this conversation to just, tap into your world a little bit, so you can share with us what you think. Currently today, there's so much talk about sustainability. Everyone is talking about it. It's like the new buzzword. And some companies are talking about it, but there's a difference between talking about it and walking in it. So it'd be good to listen to you share from your wealth of experience. How can we take it from sort of like conceptualizing phase, like what we would like to do, to what we're actually doing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. And I will. Actually, you're right. It's a special moment in time. And I think, like you said, for us the same, it also gives time to reflect a little bit. And we'll all start thinking about, when we go back to normal, is it back to normal or will it be a new normal? And how will, probably also after this, sustainability and that even more in our daily business. Of course, it's directly about health of people, but it's also about less traveling, having a smaller carbon footprint. I was supposed to be this week in Lagos actually as well to work on a bar design program, but already like 3 weeks ago we had to cancel it. It was a bar design program and design capability building for our colleagues in Lagos for Heineken Nigeria. And indeed, now we experience that you can also, of course, do so much in these online sessions, which makes it more sustainable. Still, as I already elaborated on, there's nothing like meeting face to face. So I'm also looking forward to do that again. Actually, I think it's only 2 months ago that my official role and responsibility and title changed from Global Head of Design to Global Head of Design and Sustainability. Because we are taking it so seriously, and because sustainability in many cases is driven by design. Designers are, I think designers always have a drive to change the world for the better, to create a better future. That's in the end why you become a designer. Because you're positive, you have the hope, you create hope for people, that you design better stuff, better propositions, better products, better fashion, better beer serving rituals, whatever it is, than that existed before. And that's also commercially interesting because that's what consumers and customers buy into. I mean, that's simply also what keeps the world going. So also within Heineken, we acknowledge that our supply chain people can do a whole lot. So they've saved a lot of energy in the meantime. They changed from, for a large part already, from fossil fuels to renewable energy, make sure that we don't pollute any water, etc., etc. But in the end, we think it only gets real traction if, from a brand point of view, we can leverage what we do well in sustainability. And if we can change our propositions that we sell to consumers, the bottles and the cans and the draft in bars, and explain also to people, educate maybe a little bit, why choice A is more sustainable than choice B. And so that, makes me very happy that being responsible for design and then packaging and merchandise are two important areas where, of course, sustainability is, in the meantime, I think 80% of what drives us to innovate. And, especially also for a brand like Heineken, Heineken is not just a beer. We always tend to think back to Freddie Heineken. Freddie Heineken was the third generation of the Heineken family. Back in the 60s, I have a super cool picture of him here. He looks a bit like James Bond on this one. Very cool. That's so cool. This is 1958. He said, "I don't just sell beer. We sell enjoyment." And that sums it up. If we would have been stuck in just talking about beer and just selling beer, we would have never become the iconic global brand we are. He said we sell enjoyment, and enjoyment is an experience, is the fun, is the whole emotion around drinking a beer. Together with friends, with family, going out. Well, currently we're a bit confined in that. We're very confined in it. But even like this, we do drinks like this, of course. Of course. We cheers each other nowadays online. That makes that Heineken is not just a beer. Heineken is bigger than that. Heineken stands for a lifestyle. Heineken is about worldliness and about progress. I always say the most important personality value of the Heineken brand is progressiveness. And then if you want to walk the talk, you better be really progressive. And sustainability is one of the core topics of this moment in time, to show your progress and to prove that you can innovate for the better. And that's what we're doing. You, on the one hand, could say, if I only 2 months ago got it in my title and in my responsibility, that's a bit late, because sustainability was on the agenda already for years. Yes, it's a bit late, but with a good reason. We always internally thought we do quite a lot, but we're not perfect yet. And then there was a sort of modesty. Let's not start to already scream about what we do well. We want to first have our house in order. We want to first do. We want to first make sure that we can truly already have a lot of proof points where we have been improving and where we are sustainable, where we are more sustainable than in the past or than others. And this is the sort of moment that we thought, okay, now we dare to get more extrovert about it and start talking about it. We're not done. We're not ready. This is typically a topic where I think you're never ready. Well, you're ready the moment you have zero footprint. The moment you are completely climate neutral. If I focus on planet and sustainability, then you could say you're ready. Well, for most companies, that will be in 2040 would be my guess. Realistically, maybe 2050. But so we're on a journey. We're not perfect. We're on a journey. We're progressing nicely. We've done already a lot. So we thought this is the moment to also, with the Heineken brand, start to become more expressive about it and talk about what we do well, and also get in conversation with, platforms like this, with Lagos Fashion Week, but it's also with governments, it's with other industry peers, with festival owners and organizers, to really try to see how can we collaborate, how can we work together in the whole chain, because that's often the complexity, to become more sustainable. And so for me, this is in a fashion meets Heineken meets fashion context also interesting, because fashion is quite a progressive, big industry where a lot is going on all over the world, where we can learn from. I'm not a fashion designer. Heineken is not a fashion brand. But because we're about lifestyle, because we're about innovation, and because we're about creativity to create that experience for Heineken, we love fashion as we love architecture, as we love interior design, and we love it because it brings unexpected solutions and ideas. It brings fresh perspectives, and sometimes I once worked on a bottle, on a sustainable bottle proposition. How can we make a bottle more sustainable than what we have already? Mm-hmm. And then there was, and this is a true story, this is 5 years ago, I guess.
Okay.
A pair of jeans, a cool pair of jeans was our inspiration. And in fact, we said, if in fashion a cool pair of jeans becomes nicer, more cool, more fashionable, if you wear it, if it becomes personal, if you see a bit of the stains, if you see where it gets white, if you see maybe some tears even, older in this sense can be more beautiful. Yeah, it lived, it had a life. And that's, I have an example here. That's when we designed a bottle in such a way that the older it becomes, the more beautiful it becomes. Usually we always thought, if a bottle becomes old, it scuffs a little bit and it gets a bit dirty, and then, it becomes less premium, it becomes less beautiful. And by looking at these jeans, we thought, why can't we design a bottle that the more you use it, the more beautiful it becomes? And then actually it gets alive, and maybe in this case we even linked stories to it. You could even, via a code on your phone, see where the bottle had been, who drank from it, what they had experienced with it. And you could, let's say, forward it to the next person. So it's a reusable bottle, like you have in Nigeria. We have it here in Holland as well. So it goes back to the brewery, gets washed, gets cleaned, beer in it, people buy it and drink again from it. that's super interesting that bottle gets older and older, and it gets more experience, it gets more stuff, but this logo on the bottle gets more and more beautiful through the scuffing. Now, it's an example. It's still small. We have it in France. If you go to a nice bar in Paris, these weeks it will not work, but hopefully after summer you can experience it again. You drink from this bottle. Now, that's one of the examples of sort of cross-fertilization where fashion and product design, beer in this way, sort of met and maybe can learn from each other.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm quite intrigued by the experience economy because I believe that it's the future. It can no longer be buying a product for the sake of buying a product. You have to, when you're buying into a product, you buy into the vision behind the product, you buy into the history, you buy into the brand ideology and all of that. And Heineken's been very consistent with that. So thank you for reinforcing that, what the brand is about and your vision for the future. You talk a lot about collaboration, and I see that, for us at Lagos Fashion Week, we believe the future lies in collaboration, co-creation, and community. So I'm very curious to sort of find out, what's next, from that angle, from that perspective, with your far-reaching engagement with design, not just fashion, like you said. I'm quite intrigued to know more about, the work you wanted to come and do with bars here, and the sort of engagement that's going to bring. Is it just going to be the design, the people who own the bars, or you're incorporating people from the design world into that project?
Yeah, that's. I don't have one simple answer to that because that is very depending on the type of project we're doing. It's also learning as we speak. There's not one standard best solution. But you're right, and it's even more if you indeed work if your proposition, if what you're selling is an experience, if you're part of this experience economy, which, by the way, for sustainability could also be very good. That it's not just about buying a new product every time. And there, I think, in particularly fashion, I see already quite some brands and part of the fashion industry changing in. Around the corner here in Amsterdam, there's a great store. It's called Lena's Fashion Library. You don't buy a piece, you lease it for one party, for a week, or maybe for half a year. Completely new business model, where it's much more about the experience, because you want to wear that piece. You don't personally want to have it in your closet. And almost by definition, an experience economy requires collaboration, because in our case, looking at Heineken, we don't own bars. A couple maybe. I think in Lagos we have one, and here in Amsterdam we have a couple. But it's the majority of the bars where we sell, or stores, same story, is customers of ours. So we can deliver the beer, and we can give ideas. We can maybe deliver some stuff to decorate, but the bar has to create the experience. We don't produce bottles. We don't produce events. We're not event producers. We collaborate. And that's a chain of people. I think Heineken traditionally was always much more of the philosophy, and that was the normal, to do everything yourself. To have it controlled, to have it closed, and then it's nice and confidential. But we see it changing at the moment. You have to open up. Even a large company like Heineken, you have to open up, because you cannot invent everything yourself. And it's collaborating with bars and stores. It's collaborating with universities. In sustainability, it's typically, and for the fashion designers, exactly the same will be true. If you want to make sure that you don't have waste anymore, that if your bottle is empty, if your can is empty and you trash it, or if your shirt is done, it's old and it's get teared and people trash it, it shouldn't end up in landfill. It should go back into the cycle. That means you have to collaborate with the waste management industry. How is waste collection done? Maybe there's a deposit on something that works with retailers. Waste industry, then you go to the raw materials industry, then you go to the production units, then you and there's hardly any company in the world that can control the whole cycle. But as a designer, I'd say that's today's challenge, to understand the entire life cycle. So the life cycle analysis is the way to calculate your carbon footprint and how sustainable you are. And it's a super good work because you take into account the complete life cycle of a product. And the product becomes waste, and the waste is not really waste because it's a raw material, but closing that is extremely difficult. We've been working over the past year a lot on a very simple thing: cups at festivals. Well, if you're a festival or go to a concert or probably also to a sports stadium, you get a plastic cup mostly. Simply making sure that those plastic cups, and then you even talk about a confined space, I mean that event or that stadium is one space, get all the cups that were used there either back to clean them and reuse them, or get them in a trash can back to the producer, make new plastic granulates and make new cups out of it. It seems so easy, but it's so complex that there are a lot of reusable cups or biodegradable cups in the world. But in reality, they almost never get reused. They almost never get biodegraded. So making it really work, it's not about... Well, it has also effects on designing the cup. We just designed cups without a printed logo on it. Because a simple thing like a small printed logo on the cup makes that if you start recycling the plastic becomes more gray. It gets dirty because of the ink of the logo. So if you want to do proper sustainability design, you have to not print a logo on it, because then that plastic can recycle forever and stays transparent and is fantastic. So we then embossed a logo, so that's a relief, so it's an embossing in the material, so it doesn't take any inks. As an example, that influences your design once you start understanding the whole loop and try to close it. I'm not an expert in cotton.
No, you are. You pretty much talked about it. I mean, there's so much conversation going on about circular economy. That there's a need for us to close the loop and close the, to ensure that we reduce the number of things that's going into waste. And the only way to ensure that, right, is to be very mindful right from when we're sourcing that it's something that's going to be biodegradable, as opposed to working with things that at the end of the day, when the life cycle ends, if you can't send it back into a textile factory for the fabric to be used for something else. So it's a conversation that's very, very valuable today. And it's so interesting that you shared your approach, using Heineken and the bottling process and, ensuring that the bottles don't get embossed, so it can go back into the cycle and reuse. It's fantastic. It's a good way for us to, to start approaching fashion and to start exploring how can we do this, in a realistic way. And the whole idea is not to force everybody into it. You have to, it's a process that you have to take. It can be gradual.
Exactly. It must often be gradual, because it's also about consumers. People have to start understanding it and have to start accepting it. I see in the comments already a lot of people who say, no labels anymore on bottles, embossing is the way forward. The bottle, it's a bit more tricky because there you're on a shelf and you also need some contrast. We want people to see our brand. And the bottles that go back to the brewery, there we wash off the labels.
Of course.
Okay, then you have to make sure that if you wash off the labels, what do you do with all those old labels? Do you find a good new way of reusing them, maybe in new labels? But it could also be that we cannot use them, but that you can make textile out of it, that you can make fleece materials or sport shoes out of it. There's a lot of sport shoes now made from ocean plastics. And that means that we don't close our loop, but we have to start collaborating with Adidas or Nike to make sports shoes out of it. And that's why I think, that's why I love my job so much, because this is all of a sudden a world that's becoming so big and so interesting to try to add value to that and move everyone a bit forward.
Yes, and I guess it's in adding value that I guess we can all start becoming a bit more innovative and more creative, because you're thinking a bit more, how do I reduce waste? And I always think that, a lot of beauty comes from that. We listened to a speaker earlier on today who told us that Vandana Tewari from India, and she pretty much shared that a process without a product, that respects the environment or where it's sourcing from doesn't really do anything. And of course, a process that has no purpose is not meaningful. So listening to all of this helps reinforce that it's important you have a starting point. Like, what am I trying to do? What am I trying to achieve? So this is a bottle or this is a garment that I want to see, pretty much be passed down from generation to generation, and it appreciates its value, depending on what value means to the next person you're passing it on to, or depending on, if you're sending it back to a factory for the fabric to be reused into something completely different. So it's in understanding all of that and being able to realize that this is something we can do on our own, even if we're starting just a little bit, because I know a lot of people find it daunting and they think this whole conversation that we're having this season at Lagos Fashion Week is boring because, it's not the usual models going down the runway, and, it's all this talk about the future and repurposing and reusing and renewing, but it's comforting to know and listening to someone like yourself that, it's something that we can do. And all it takes, I guess, is having a starting point and starting maybe with one product. Like, you have maybe the bottle or the labels or just one thing, and then see how we go with reducing our carbon footprint on that.
And it's step by step. Also a little step with one product helps. Yeah. I've experienced that if you try to save the whole world at once,
you're gonna fail.
You're gonna no, but worse, you're gonna get paralyzed because then it becomes so complex. So I try with my teams, and I would say that to everyone listening or watching, be also happy with one specific, relatively little step. Focus, make one thing happen, and then the next thing, or learn from it. First small, then scale. We also often had the vision that if we wanted to improve something, it must be global. We should do it everywhere. But then simply nothing happens because the world is too big, and one material that gets well recycled in one country doesn't get well recycled in another country.
Oh, yeah.
We have super simple examples. In Europe, glass gets very well recycled. In the USA, glass gets very badly recycled, simply because the system is not there. And then you can work with partners and collaborate and try to build the system. In that sense, I remember 3 years ago, I also got the question at Lagos Fashion Week, like, what about African fashion? How can this industry, what's the value of this still relatively young and probably smaller industry in fashion than compared to Paris or Milan or New York? This might be one of the advantages, that you have less existing, rigid, installed systems, because changing that is incredibly difficult. Oh, yeah. While a continent like Africa and a country like Nigeria is younger, is more energetic, is more still developing, and will have less of a hopefully find solutions and is able to implement things quicker than when you have big established industries and systems where people are always a bit reluctant because you have to make money on your system, etc., etc. So I think there could be a great opportunity actually for the Nigerian or maybe entire African fashion world to try to inspire, and it can also be through inspiring. So you can truly make progress. But of course, and that people from New York Fashion Week look at Lagos Fashion Week because there is something happening there, and of course they're all curious and want to learn. And I think there's a huge opportunity. And that's also, by the way, the privilege of working for Heineken, that we are global. So I have the opportunity to speak to my African colleagues, but also to my Taiwanese and my Brazilian and And there's all these nice little ideas coming from everywhere, from all different cultures.
Fantastic. I completely agree with you that we we're sitting in a very good place if we can take advantage of it, of the fact that, in a way, quite a bit of our fashion is inspired by our cultural identity, our heritage. It's, inspired by craftsmanship and artisanship. So to a considerable extent, we have all of that history behind it, which sort of lends it more to a slow fashion approach as opposed to fast fashion and, producing in hundreds of thousands and trying to figure out how to send them across the world,
Because indeed, that simple model of fast fashion, that's the worst you can do for sustainability.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's not even related to real design, maybe, but simply the system to every quarter and probably more often create something. Well, and it also links to design, because if you create it very cheap and you almost design it to be thrown away 2 months later, yeah, that's terrible. You should design timeless, and that's indeed also the beauty of the craftsmanship and the kitenge. And in Africa, I can totally see that there is an opportunity to make more timeless things. And timeless doesn't need to be dull. You are the masters in having not dull fashion, but be colorful and expressive and show personality. But don't throw it away after 2 months. I mean, use it for a long time.
Definitely. So I hear you have a treat in store for us today in terms of, something for us to take away and for some of the young emerging designers in our ecosystem to, something to leave them with to work on this season of lockdown.
Exactly. Spend your time in lockdown well. No, it is a bit because of that, because now we are filling in the program like this, everyone from home, and well, it works surprisingly well. No, and also because indeed, content-wise, we are always looking for innovation. We want to get new ideas, and we want to collaborate. And I say we want to get new ideas, but it's always a two-way collaboration. So we also want to give people a platform and a chance to shine and to showcase their talents. So as of now, we launch a design contest, a design challenge. So inviting with my colleagues in Lagos all the designers that are currently watching, but also all that are not watching, and we'll see this later, to send in their sustainable fashion designs. And I'll say it right, so I have it on paper here. The theme is Africa Shaping Fashion's Future. That's exactly what we were just talking about. Africa Shaping Fashion's Future. That's a big ambition, but take it.
Very big.
That's a big ambition, but that's good. Think big, dream big. And then we ask, and you can be a designer, but you can also not be a designer, but just have inspiration and feel like you want to do it. Make one mood board and 3 sketches, and feel free. It can be a hand sketch, it can be on the computer, it can be super sophisticated. It's not about who executes the best sketch, it's about who has the best ideas. One mood board and 3 sketches, and you put it on Instagram, and you add the hashtag Heineken Design Contest. Hashtag Heineken Design Contest. Super simple. You'll see it on, I guess, on the Lagos Fashion Week official Instagram feed after this, but you'll also see it on the Heineken Nigeria Instagram feed. All explained. Hashtag Heineken Design Contest. We are going to select a short list of 10. I hope we'll get hundreds, maybe thousands of entrants. We'll go through it. We'll get to a short list of 10. And in the end, we'll decide on a winner. And the winner will be able to feature, to showcase at Lagos Fashion Week in October this year. October this year, we expect it will be on. We can all get together again and we can have a show. We will make sure Heineken will be there, of course. And the winning design can feature there. October 2020 is the planning. Now, and we'll look at it. I'll just say, let's say, I summarize it in 3 criteria. It has to be original and innovative. So there has to be a certain originality and innovativeness in it. And that's broad. I'm not going to be super specific. Second, sustainable. So there must be a sustainable element to it. We talked about it. You cannot think about the future of fashion without thinking about sustainability. And third, there has to be a fit with Africa and with Heineken. So original, innovative, sustainable, and a fit with Africa and Heineken. It's quite open, so I don't think it's restrictive. You can still go very wild and have enormous fun. Make 1 mood board, make 3 sketches, and get it out there. And then maybe we can, not maybe, certainly we can showcase some fantastic stuff at Lagos Fashion Design Week later this year.
Thank you, Mark. That's really exciting. I remember the last design competition about 3 years ago, or was it 4 years ago? It was huge, with I think it was through Nairobi, and I remember I was one of the judges at some point. It was such a
Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, those all the countries. And,
Yes, it was. It was really good. And then at some point there was an element of collaboration, and the final collection at Lagos Fashion Week, it was really spectacular. Yeah, so one lucky designer is about to, experience, I guess, what it feels like to present their work at Lagos Fashion Week with some guidance, of course, from the team. But don't forget the watchword, guys, or the criteria: innovation, originality, and be inspired by Heineken and Africa, sustainability, shaping fashion's future. So that's exciting times ahead. All the information will be on our page, website, Instagram, Twitter, and I'm so sorry. I think I pressed something because I got messages that, people were trying to join and they couldn't find the live icon on Lagos Fashion Week page. I'm so sorry. I'm not very good with tech or social media, but I do a lot of it, so I don't know what I did wrong. But this is going to be on our Instagram live for the next 24 hours for anyone who's missed this, and of course on our YouTube page. So we're going to open it up to question and answers now. Anybody, if you have questions, please ask Mark. And
Fashion is tech now.
Oh yes, it is. It is.
That's another nice sort of cross-fertilization, collaboration territory.
So my question, so where do you see, or how do you see technology, or what role do you see technology playing in this future we're talking about, especially when it comes to craftsmanship in Africa? Is this something that you thought about?
Yes. In general, there is so much technology development going on in, I'd say both in material developments. We think traditionally cotton and wool, but it can be recycled ocean plastic, upcycled plastics. I don't know if you know MIT Media Lab. They're developing truly the materials of the future, zero impact materials. It can be seaweed, it can be fungi materials growing, even absorbing CO2. That's real high tech, and that of course then also comes with new production technologies. So it's the material, but then how do you make clothes out of it? How do you make apparel out of it, or anything else? I mean, I was in Dutch Design Week. There was half a year ago a sort of little house built from these future materials. So I'd say that's the most fundamental stream of innovation technology that's going on, where many industries, but certainly also fashion, will benefit from. You can of course also take it from a completely different angle. Wearable technology. If we would have had the technology to detect whether you have a coronavirus in your blood or not, and the technology is in your shirt, and your phone sends it, and we have this technology already with blood pressure or running in your shoes or in your running shirt. But for health and well-being, there is a lot of this sort of technology being developed at the moment. This could have, how do you say that in English? This could have made that we didn't have this corona crisis at all. If immediately we would have been able to test everybody, to know who has the infection, to isolate, to make sure that it doesn't travel. Yeah, today that's still a bit too difficult. And we were not, then you should know what might be coming and blah, blah, blah. It's not as easy as I now say it. But in principle, you can do it. And then you'll never have a crisis like this again. So wearable technology, which is mingling smartphone, artificial intelligence technology, big data technology with fashion, because fashion apparel is one of the unique things that each person, you have it on you, you wear it, so it's all the time with you. Your phone you can still lose and you have to keep it in your pocket. The moment it's in your jacket, it's in your shirt or in your pants, it's that opens all of a sudden a whole lot of new areas and will of course also inspire new sorts of fashion design.
I see a few questions popping up. I just saw one. How does Heineken plan to help sustainable practices scale up? A lot of the resource needed to expand on, how do you do this? To expand on sustainability. 1 second. Well, I'll take the first part that I can read properly. How does Heineken plan to help sustainable practices scale up?
We don't have one standard answer for that. So our first focus is making sure that our carbon footprint and our footprint on the planet becomes as quickly as possible, as small as possible. So there the moment we see an opportunity, we see that in the future there might be a business case that works, there might be a scalable solution, we invest in it. We're going to collaborate with whomever comes with it. Of course, we need to test. We have a lot of these small startups, but also big tech companies coming to us with ideas. So there the moment we see an opportunity, we see that in the future there might be a business case that works. There might be a scalable solution. We invest in it. We're going to collaborate with whomever comes with it. Of course, we need to test. We have a lot of companies, small startups, but also big tech companies coming to us with ideas. Of course, not everything works, simply because, there's a bloody simple thing. Packing beer in a proper way is not easy. The nice future materials I was talking about, of spirulina or seaweed or fungi, today you can still not put beer in it. And it looks like there's not in the near future a solution to do it. Still, we're watching at it. So we're assessing very carefully what might work, where are in the future probably the opportunities. And then we keep an eye, we co-invest, we pilot, we test small. And the moment we see that it works, the moment we see there's also a business case element to it, the moment we see that the numbers work, the money works, you can imagine if a pack is all of a sudden 10 times the price of a current pack, that's difficult. And often that's a matter of scale. If you do it small, it will always be more expensive. If you go bigger, it becomes cheaper. But those are difficult balances to make. And then you can imagine there's a lot of people involved and the impact can be big. But that's one of the ways to scale it up. If we talk merchandise, we buy quite a lot of fashion. We buy quite a lot of T-shirts, caps, aprons. Buy because we design it, but there's factories all over the world producing those materials for us, and then it's nice Heineken green, and there's a nice logo on it, maybe with Champions League or Formula One or sponsorships of ours. We're also in contact with these people and pushing them all the time guys, what is the material? What is your carbon footprint? Even already getting the numbers often makes them move. If we push them to go to more recycled material or a better recyclable material or a mono material, which is by definition better recyclable than a composed material, then simply because we're Heineken, we immediately bring scale. We bring more scale than one of their small customers. And that can for them be, I hope that's always what we hope, that for them that's the threshold that they get over then, and that they can change their process to a more sustainable solution because we ask them. We've seen the same with can suppliers, aluminium, simply saying to the guys, if you don't put more recycled aluminium in the cans for us, we're going to go to your competitor. They say they can do it. You'd better do it because otherwise we're going to go to your competitor. Now, those mechanics immediately make that the industry of recycled aluminium gets more scale, becomes more interesting, and then we all benefit.
Well, thank you for sharing that. So I guess it's we'll just wait, and hopefully one of these days an African designer would be one African textile company will collaborate with you on the production or in the production of either T-shirts. I think I saw on the internet once, I don't know if it's a real it was a collaboration or a prototype of a pair of sneakers with Nike. Did that really happen, or was it just a picture? I think was it a prototype?
No, it was it's a very funny story. It's a real Nike shoe, so it's nice green with a red star and a white side, and looks like Heineken. It doesn't say Heineken on it.
Oh, I see.
Very cool, fashionable item. But we saw it, and this is already quite some years ago. We were not involved. We didn't know where it came from. And we said, guys, is this a Heineken shoe? And they said, no. They said, no, it's the Mexico shoe. The Mexican flag is green, white, and red, and also with stars in it.
Interesting.
The official explanation, if I remember well, was that it's the Mexico shoe, but I think it was with a big wink in the eye to also have. So we took it as a compliment. We love it. I have quite some Heineken shoes, but I don't have a pair of those. I would still love to find them sometime somewhere, but.
Oh, that's super cool.
We do fashion. You do find more recent collaborations. We call it, if the people listen, if you Google Heineken 100, Heineken and then the number 100, you find quite some fashion collaborations with Bathing Ape from Japan, Bape, Heineken and Bape. It's very limited editions. The 100 stands for that we only make 100 pieces of each. So that's those are the sort of creative laboratory tryouts, create some super cool stuff.
Oh, that's so cool. Hopefully, we'll keep dreaming. Millie Mills is asking, should fashion houses be responsible for closing the loop?
I don't know if fashion houses should be. I think it's good if
it's joint.
They're part of it. And whoever takes the initiative in the end doesn't really matter. Often you see that the big brands, the big fashion houses, maybe, certainly have have a consumer-facing brand and name, so they can make something famous. Often also maybe these guys have scale and have money to do it and to kickstart it. But I'd say in the end it doesn't matter. Which part of the chain takes the initiatives? I mean, ideally they all take the initiative and quickly find each other.
Joint effort, I think.
Exactly. But so I'd say anyone in the fashion industry always try to take the initiative to at least get around the table with the other parts of the chain, because that's the start of everything.
Yeah. And then there's another question, Lompe Ige. Sustainability has become a buzzword. How do brands like Heineken ensure that they don't come as jumping on the bandwagon? I think you've talked about this extensively.
Yeah, that's typically because we didn't want to talk about it or advertise it before we really did a lot. That's. I also saw a question about how do you do it without greenwashing. That's about taking it seriously. If you do something that looks sustainable and sounds sustainable and sounds good PRable, but if you really do the calculation, fantastic, and I get them in my inbox all the time. It looks super sexy and it looks like very innovative, but if you understand what's behind it and if you calculate it, it's bullshit. It's simply not possible, or it has a higher carbon footprint than the current solution. Yeah, and it's often difficult. It's difficult for people to tell the difference because it's a complex topic. It's often difficult for journalists to tell the difference because, newspapers, blogs, everyone posts it because they believe it and it looks good. But it's really not an easy topic.
Yeah. I've just seen another interesting question from Wale Lagos. Apart from fashion and technology, is Heineken going to be interested in running an ambassadorship program or loyalty program for the brand? Because I guess most of the conversation today has been around fashion, technology, innovation, design. But would there be anything like a reward program or loyalty program for the brand in Nigeria?
I think I'll have to pass that question to my colleagues in Nigeria. Okay. We are organized in such a way that here in Amsterdam, in head office, we design packaging, we design the bigger programs, we take a lot of innovation initiatives. But in the end, these sort of things, loyalty programs, ambassador programs, etc. Also being part of Lagos Fashion Week is all on the conto of my colleagues in Nigeria. They do that super well. So maybe later they can come back to this question and type the answer.
And Wale, I've been to Heineken House. Have you been to the new one? It's been what's it called? They've revamped it, so to speak, and it's amazing. I think for me that could be an example of a customer loyalty program or reward because it's super
and I think they run these sort of things over there, but I don't know the details. No, I've not been. I was supposed to be this week.
It's so cool. I can't wait. We were supposed to host this event there. So when COVID-19 came, we're all confused in the team for the first 2 weeks. Like, you mean we won't have the opportunity to, use the house and get people to experience all that, that's been done.
I truly hope that in October, during Lagos Fashion Week, I'll be there.
Yeah, thank you. So one last question. 1 second. Before Made Every Day. Oh, I think you've answered this. How true is your brand to sustainability drawing the line with greenwashing? That sensibly. What else? Do you think reducing the amount of collections from the Orange Nerd, do you think reducing the amount of collections and looks in a collection is also a form of sustainability? It's a stupid question, but I've been thinking, especially with all that's going on around now. So the question is, should designers reduce their collection and make it sort of short and compact as opposed to having like a 50-piece collection, sending it down the runway, which I think a lot of designers around here think is the way to go. But,
No, it's probably yes. I don't have the wisdom here, but I do think it's a good question to ask yourself, because I can imagine that often it creates a lot of waste, and it's not just for the runway show, of course, but creating big collections that go to stores that all have to sell out. If you think real production, that makes that things have to go in the sale afterwards to still sell it out. That makes that and then in the end you have a lot of leftovers. The more pieces you have to have them in all the sizes, the more difficult it is to end of season have everything sold out. I think on average, fashion brands do not sell 40% of their stock. And that in the end gets destroyed. Or you give it for free in a poor country for poor people who otherwise cannot afford clothing. But there's also a limit to that. And many brands don't want to do that because then they see their brand all of a sudden in places where they don't want to see it. So I think making a more compact collection. I just bought a year ago. I bought a jacket of a new Dutch brand. It's called Salle Privé. They say we don't do fashion collections seasonally anymore. We don't do seasonalities anymore. We do summer, we do winter, but all our effort goes into making completely timeless items and in perfectioning them, so that our jacket and our shirt and our trousers are simply the best in the world. And they're not super expensive, but it's just functionally really good. And that makes that you can almost do a lifetime with it. And that's a very different vision. Make sure that you have a good collection of the basics, the good colors, so that you can combine and that you can keep it forever and it stays in fashion forever. It will never stay in fashion really forever, but that's their vision. Yeah. And every time they redesign it, they don't redesign it to have a complete new look, but to make it even better. Now, that's sort of putting the fashion model of seasonality completely upside down.
Of course.
Yes, that's a more sustainable solution.
And that's the future.
And that's the future. And still we want diversity and we want to buy something new every now and then. But maybe that in combination with what I explained in the beginning, leasing some clothes that are more expressive and that you want to wear a couple of times because it's different and because it's new, then it goes back and someone else can. So it will probably be a mix of all these sorts of models. That will change the whole business model and the whole value chain in the fashion industry.
That's very, very, very valid. And our last question before we sign up: how do you think this pandemic will change our consumption habits?
Yeah, that's the most difficult question. There's a lot of talking already, and we have it with our colleagues at Heineken also about how will the world be changed after this. For me, probably the most fundamental thing is consciousness about vulnerability of us as people and our planet. This is an example. I think no one had ever foreseen that something like this could happen. Well, now you of course see some future predictors or virologists who already 15 years ago said, be aware, there will be a virus once, wherever it comes from, that will stop the whole world. And we all thought, it won't go that bad. And it is happening, it did happen. And for me, it is the example that shows that a tiny little virus can all of a sudden stop the world. And that makes you sort of humble, and that shows how vulnerable we are. And it's true for people, but it's also true for the planet. And that's what we've been talking about the whole time now. Our whole ecosystem, and we are simply part of this whole ecosystem, is very vulnerable. And we have not been all treating it very well over the past century. So what I hope is that there will be a sort of global understanding, like, guys, we need to take care. We need to take care of the planet, and that means we need to take care of ourselves. And think a bit deeper, and also appreciate the beauty of life and the beauty of our planet a bit more. That would be my wish, and that would be the sort of positive take out of this crisis.
Thank you very much, and I think it's the perfect way to end this conversation. That of course the future belongs to us, but we all have to be mindful about how we treat each other, how we treat our environment, because the single thread that binds us all together is our humanity. And I'm responsible for myself, but I'm also more responsible for you in being responsible for myself. So, but thank you so much, Mark, for taking time out, to spend with us and share.
Thank you.
Thank you for the gift you're giving, fashion ecosystem this season or the task, you've given them. Hopefully, we look forward to seeing amazing work from people.
Yeah.
From the Heineken Design Challenge.
Start designing
start creating.
Hashtag Heineken Design Contest. You posted. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And this conversation will be on our page for the next 24 hours and on YouTube. So thank you everyone for joining us from everywhere. Thank you so much.
Have a good evening and stay safe, stay healthy.
Stay safe, stay healthy. Bye. Thank you.